Welcome to video 1 of the Financial Systems and Automation program. In this video, I'm going to talk to you about the core concepts. These concepts are different from other financial concepts that you may be aware of, and it takes into account that perspective of financial planning and financial mindset that particularly the financially free have. But be aware of the subtle changes in concepts from the ones that you already know to what I'm going to talk about today. Okay, ready to go? Let's get started. So the first concept is the concept of earned versus passive income. Okay, and this is very important. When we're looking at financial freedom, passive income is our route to get there. Okay, so earned income is basically what you need to work for. Okay, so it could be a job that you have or a job that you own when you're self-employed. Passive income, on the other hand, is where your money is working for you. Your investments are working for you. So this could be investments that you've made in paper assets, stocks, bonds, shares, and the likes, or in real estate, or even in other businesses. But the difference here is, do you need to show up? To have passive income, you should not need to show up to work to make that income. I always give the example of Bill Gates. So Bill Gates owns Microsoft, right? And what happened if Bill Gates decided to take a vacation, which he did? But if he decided to take a vacation, do you think the value of his business will go up or down? It'll still go up, right? As against a self-employed person who owns a shop, for example, if he doesn't show up to work, what are the chances that when he comes back after, let's say, 6 months, what are the chances if he comes back after 6 months, the shop is actually closed down? Very high, right? That's the difference between self-employed and the owner of a business. Then we move on to assets and liabilities. Most people are happy to just balance their budgets, right? Understand where the salary is, how much they're making, and how much they're spending. And whatever's left over is what they decide to save. But if you really want to get control of your financial health, of your financial well-being, then you need to understand the concept of assets and liabilities. So let's understand what are assets and liabilities. If you look at the textbook definition of assets and liabilities, assets are defined as anything of value that can be converted into cash, and liabilities as legal debts or obligations. Now, this is all financial jargon, so let me break it down to you in simpler terms. Assets are simply something that puts money into your pocket, so something that gives you money. Liabilities, on the other hand, are something that takes money away from you, takes money out of your pocket. Now, this is an important concept when we are managing our finances, and more important when we are planning our finances. This difference, this understanding of assets and liabilities go a long way in getting to our goal of financial freedom. So imagine that you own a car. Okay, maybe this car. Let's say you paid 5 lakhs for this car. You paid a down payment of just 1 lakh rupees, and the balance amount of 4 lakhs you took from the bank. Now, as long as you are using the car for your own personal benefits, then the entire 4 lakhs is your liabilities. And the 1 lakh amount is your cost into the car, right? Now, if I start using this car as a taxi on the hand, it immediately becomes an asset. It's something that's putting money into your pocket. Obviously, assuming that the amount that you're able to generate from using the taxi or renting out the taxi is more than or at least equal to the amount that you need to pay as EMI on the bank loan. So in these two situations, you'll understand in the first instance, the car was a liability. Why? Because it was taking money out of your pocket. On the other hand, in the second situation, the car has become an asset because it's putting money into your pocket. This is a subtle difference. This is a very valuable difference, and you must understand it and appreciate it and really look at your balance sheet and understand what is working for you and what you are working for. Now we move on to cash flow patterns. Now, cash flow patterns were designed by Robert Kiyosaki, the author of Rich Dad Poor Dad. He was able to identify the cash flow patterns of the rich, the middle class, and the poor. When you look at the cash flow patterns of the poor, middle class, and the rich, you'll understand what it means to have the cash flow patterns of the rich, of the financially free, and of the affluent. Now, the differentiating factor in these three scenarios is where the money is getting generated and how it flows. For the poor, the income is equal to the cost, and there is little or no savings. So they have no possibility of creating any assets. Essentially, money in and money out. There are no assets and no income from assets. The cash flow pattern of the middle class is slightly more complex. The middle class owns a house, a car, maybe some jewelry, things that they think are assets, but actually are not. They may actually be qualified as liabilities. These are things that the bank lets them think that they are assets. But if you look at the definition of an asset, something that puts money into your pocket, you'll realize that these things don't do that. These things, in most situations, actually take money out of your pocket. For example, the house that we live in. At the end of the month, the house doesn't put any money into my pocket. In fact, I'll end up spending money on its maintenance or maybe even on repaying the loan outstanding on it. Therefore, it's taking money out of my pocket. And so it should be actually qualified as a liability. So when we're looking at the cash flow patterns of the middle class, we need to identify true assets and liabilities so that we can actually understand what the cash flow pattern is. The cash flow patterns of the middle class looks like this because their assets don't generate enough money to take care of their costs. And therefore, to take care of their costs, they have to depend on earned income. And if the earned income stops, their lifestyle cannot be maintained. And which brings us to the cash flow pattern of the rich. Now, here you will notice that the area that generates the cash flow or generates the income is not in the income column. It's in fact coming from the assets itself. So the assets that they own are actual assets which generate money, which put money into their pocket. So the assets that the rich own are money generating assets, are true assets. And this circular flow is the true essence of financial freedom. So you will see a stark contrast in this cash flow pattern. There is no earned income, or at least it's not required to take care of the cost. The assets generate the income to take care of the cost. And whatever is left over is invested into acquiring further assets that only generate more income. And the cycle continues. The rich get richer. So now that you know the different possible scenarios, you will know which one you want to get to. What you will not understand is really how to get there. Let me help you with that one. There are 3 rules that will allow you to develop the cash flow pattern of the rich. Let's go through that one by one. Number 1, control your costs and make sure you save first and spend later. Number 2, constantly look for and acquire true assets. And finally, number 3, don't buy liabilities. Create assets that will then pay for any liabilities that you would like to acquire, and understand that liabilities are a self-indulgence. The 3 piggy banks. When we look towards financial well-being, there is nothing that has more profound an impact on our finances than the concept of the 3 piggy banks. Let me take you through this one by one. Traditionally, most of us will save only that component of our earnings that has not been allocated to cost. So as I've said before, we tend to spend first and save later. What I mean by that is when we have a salary, we have our already allocated costs against that. And whatever's left over is the component that we save. Now, what I'm telling you to do is to take that savings component first and then allocate costs accordingly. So let's say you're earning ₹1,00,000 and you decide to save 20% of that income. Then save that 20%. So put that 20,000 aside and the balance should be then allocated to your costs, not the other way around. Traditionally, most of us save only that component of the income that is not allocated to cost. So we pay the government first in the form of taxes, the landlord in the form of rent, or the bank in form of loans, EMI, and all the other costs before we pay ourselves. Now, this way of thinking, way of managing our finances is so ingrained in us that it requires a complete shift in our approach to savings. The 3 piggy banks help with this. And they help us achieve this change systematically and efficiently. Let me show you how. The idea is to decide beforehand how much we're going to save. Let's say you're making ₹1,00,000 and from that you decide to save 20%. You can start with a daily savings target if you find that an overall monthly target is too much. And you can start with as little as you want. But the idea is to get used to saving, get used to deciding beforehand what that saving is going to be. So let's say you decide to have 1 less coffee every day and save that ₹100. Now that amounts to ₹3,000 every month. Now what your task is to divide this 3,000 into the 3 piggy banks, 1,000 for each piggy bank. This means that you will put ₹1,000 in the piggy bank for savings, 1,000 in the piggy bank for investments, and 1,000 in the piggy bank for charity. These are the 3 piggy banks that you will have: savings, investments, and charity. The savings component will go towards creating that emergency fund for you. The investments component will go towards creating those real assets that we spoke about. And finally, charity. Charity is almost as important as the other 2. You see, by giving, we get into the mindset of having. And this mindset creates abundance in our own life. It attracts wealth into our own lives. So by giving, we actually are attracting more wealth into our lives. And finally, thinking right. You see, the subject of money is not something that is taught in school. It is something, unfortunately, that we learn at home. Therefore, for those of us coming from a poor or middle-class family background, that same thinking about money continues. The rich get richer, the poor get poorer, and the middle class struggles in debt because our thoughts about money don't change. Therefore, to really change our financial situations and get that financial freedom that we so desire, we need to think appropriately, to change our thinking to the way the rich think. You see, the rich don't think differently. They think oppositely. And here I will show you what that difference is so that you can make those changes as well and get to your goal, to the path to financial freedom. Now, the poor think that the only way to make more money is to work harder, right? Get a second job, acquire the skills to get higher wages. That's the thing. But the problem with this approach is that you're using no leverage whatsoever. Your time is the one that is being used to generate any income. So your standard of living deteriorates and you get little time to do the things that matter to you. Time with your family, following a passion, giving back, those kinds of things. Secondly, the poor way of thinking doesn't follow the concept of pay yourself first. So accordingly, the poor spend as much as they earn. Now understand, it's not the amount that matters. You could be making millions in a year. But if you're spending all that you're making, you still have a poor mindset. You will land up looking at second jobs. You will land up looking for higher paying jobs. But if your outlook towards spending does not change, you will always have a poor mindset, a poor person's mindset. Again, a poor person is not the one who has a low level of income. It is one who spends as much as he makes. Now, the middle class is only slightly better. They also believe that the only way to make more money is to earn more money. But their savings is slightly more than their costs. So they have a little bit of savings, they have good credit, and they can acquire luxuries that they can defer the payment on. So they go to acquire assets, or at least things that they think are assets. So they feel that the things that they're acquiring, a large house, jewelry, cars, are assets. They're real assets. But they're actually not assets because, as we saw in the definition of real assets and real liabilities, assets are something that put money into my pocket. These things don't do that. So the middle class is struggling in debt because they're acquiring assets that are not true assets. But what is really happening is that they're stuck in this race to look good in the eyes of others and land up buying liabilities that they think are assets. So again, the rich don't do things differently. They do things oppositely. They start by paying themselves first. They always set aside money to invest in real assets. They buy real assets that use leverage and make money work for them using other people's time and other people's money. And then they let these assets pay for the luxuries they enjoy. The rich also spend money in acquiring skills and knowledge. But unlike the poor and middle class, the rich acquire skills and knowledge that help them invest wisely and efficiently.